think it's the sort of thing where somebody comes in and goes, "What are you doing?"
So I've never physically shaved a yak, but I have oiled the horn of a Highland cow.
I'm just doing a bit of yak shaving.
It's usually your wife or girlfriend go, "What are you doing?"
It's so out there, you never hear anything like it.
Life is just a series of shaving a whole herd of yaks. Have you ever found yourself doing something that really wasn't part of the original plan? Well, as it turns out, you're not alone. Hello and welcome to Sketchplanations, the podcast. Now, there are two camps to consider here. Those who go, Sketchplanations podcast? Oh, cool. And there are those who are a bit more, hang on, what? Either way, you're very welcome. But for those in that second group, Sketchplanations is a series of sketches and illustrations you can find online where each sketch attempts to explain something from the world around us, hence sketch, explanation, Sketchplanations. But the best way to know what I'm talking about is to simply pop online to sketchplanations.com or just search for Sketchplanations on Instagram or Twitter. You'll find it. And the links to all those places are in the description for this podcast. And in this podcast, we select one of those sketches each episode and dissect it to within a nanometer of its life. I'm Rob Bell, an engineer and broadcaster, and I'm joined by two of my very close friends who I've known from studying engineering at university. That's Jono, the talent behind Sketchplanations, and Tom Pellereau, aka Inventor Tom, aka the Apprentice winner from the telly in 2011, aka Tally-ho, Tommy. Gents, hello. You all right?
Very good, thank you, mate. Yeah, it's been a productive day working on sketches, actually. It's been brilliant.
Ooh, has it? He never stops, this guy. Tommy, I've been doing a bit more Googling on you since last week.
Okay, good.
And I found this quote from right after you won The Apprentice.
Nice.
You said, "I don't think I'm a nodding dog or an underdog. The dog that comes to mind most is Lassie. He was helpful, clever and caring." That was 12 years ago. Do you still stand by that these days, Tommy?
Isn't that amazing? I don't remember saying that at all. I do remember the nodding dog thing coming up quite a bit.
Somebody made it
well,
up.
Last year, I think that's pretty cool. Well, yeah.
I think it's good. Yeah. I'd say that's about the same still.
I thought you were going to read a quote from somebody else. So a quote from me is, yeah.
Yeah. A quote from you about you.
About you. There's nothing vain in that, I'm sure. Cool.
Jono, you've been working on Sketchplanations today, have you? A new one that'll you publish them on Sundays, don't you?
That's right. Every Sunday. It's quite nice being on a Sunday, I think, because not much comes in on a Sunday. So people are, generally kicking back. It arrives sometime during the day, and if nothing's on, you've got the time to do it. It arrives during the week, everybody's busy. Oh, another thing to read. So yeah, Sundays, every Sunday.
It's a highlight for me. I mean, there's so much variety within the back catalogue of Sketchplanations. Do you have like a load of ideas like backed up? Do you have a load of ideas backed up that are ready to go? Or, I mean, where do you get your inspiration, your ideas from?
I'd say I have a backlog. Yeah, a backlog of
ideas.
Backlog,
thank you. That's the word I was looking for.
Jono's not backed up, everyone. It's fine.
No, but I have a backlog of ideas. No, I'm always on the lookout. I sort of trained myself to be on the lookout for things. I actually had an idea the other day. I was thinking if somebody was going to ask me for some advice, my advice would be to start collecting things. Actually, I think collecting things generally has served me pretty well over the years, and so it's another form of that, collecting these ideas. It's just a little note thing. Oh, that's interesting. I'll put it in there. Make sure I don't forget it. Try and write down as much as I can at the time when it's actually clear. Otherwise, I come back to it and I have to learn it all again. But there you go.
It's a nice way to think about it. I like that. A way, collecting things. Have you got a collection of anything, Tom?
My son, I've got a 9-year-old, and he has found the Warhammer in the last couple of weeks, and he's started really getting into Warhammer 40,000 as it is now, and he's really into collecting things. It was Super Zings, and now it's Warhammer, and now he's got them in his little box, and we go along and we paint them and all that sort of stuff. It's a long time since I've collected stuff other than collecting emails. I'm very good at collecting emails.
I was thinking about collecting stuff. I've collected just a few little physical things, not many. So my job as design, I'm always collecting nice design ideas. I used to collect like nice product design or inventions, right? And I collect quotes. Just as you see them, just take the moment, that little moment, that 10 seconds to like make a note of it. And then all of it, I say, all of a sudden, years later, then years later, you look back and you've actually got quite something that's, you start to see the patterns between them. I think it's quite interesting. Anyway.
And a collection probably doesn't start out to purposefully be a collection, does it? In that sense, in what you're talking about, it just kind of happens. And then there's a point you look back and go, oh, got quite a lot of that now.
Yeah, you start like, it'd be quite nice to remember that thing. And then you spot another one. And then you add it to that one. And then you spot another one. So it's nice to have a little place to add. So I'm always, I'm collecting ideas for Sketchplanations these days.
Anyway, this is our podcast. There are a few about. I mean, I was looking at some stats about podcasts generally today, just to understand the kind of field that we're stepping into. Have you got any idea how many podcast series there are out there? Any idea? Guess.
It must now be like, is it a billion yet? It's like millions and millions, right? It's
I was going to say thousands, tens of thousands.
Like tonight, so I didn't have headphones. I'd left them at my work, and I messaged out on a WhatsApp group for my street. Turns out that just on my street, there is someone who writes podcasts, and there's someone who gives podcasts, and there's someone who used to do podcasts. And you're like, this is just on my road. How many, Robbie? Come on, tell me.
Well, so apparently there are over 5 million podcast series with over 70 million episodes between them as of February of this year.
5 million, like, running podcasts.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if they're running or not, but they're kind of out there in the ether. So how on earth we're going to make any kind of dent in that mountain? I don't know. But, we're here. We're doing it anyway.
Are we bothered?
We're not bothered.
This is wonderful. Just talking to you two. I really hope people do enjoy this eventually, if they ever hear it. But amazing.
If not, we'll have a collection of podcasts. Well, listen, I'm delighted as well to be here back again with both of you to while away the evening with some chat. And I guess we should probably crack on with exactly that. Let's get started. This episode, we're going to be looking at yak shaving. Sorry, what? Yes, yak shaving. The idea that in order to accomplish a particular task, you might find yourself needing to complete something else first, which in turn requires doing another little thing beforehand, and so on and so on and so on. Now, if you've not already had a look at this sketch, the artwork or the picture for this podcast episode on your screen should be the sketchplanation of yak shaving. But alternatively, you can find it online or on social media through the links in the description to this podcast. All right then, Jono, this is your bit. Over to you. Yak shaving. It's not a phrase you hear every day, is it?
It's not. It's kind of a ridiculous phrase. But that's the beauty of it, and it's also the point of it, I think. The point is, why would you be doing such a ridiculous activity? And the thing about yak shaving, which is sort of interesting, is that actually it has a purpose, is that you were trying to achieve some goal, and then in order to achieve that goal, you had to do something else, but that something was in the way of that, and then you had to do something else, and all the way to the fact that somebody finds you shaving a yak, and then what on earth are you doing shaving a yak? Well, I'm trying to do this thing here. So that's the genesis of it, and obviously why I drew somebody shaving a yak. But I learned it from a developer that I worked with, and it's very common when you're working with code and developing software. A classic example I was thinking of might be you go in and somebody says, "Oh, let's change the color from a light blue to a dark blue." And so you go into the software to change it to a dark blue. So all you have to do is change one little bit of code to the other one. But then you go and you have a look, and then you're like, okay, it's not in the standard format. I'll just change it into the other format. And then you're like, well, actually, it should really be a variable because we're going to use it in other places. So I'll make a variable. And actually, we should do a variable file. So I'll add in some of the other colors into that variable file. And then you find that there's a library that will manage your variables. And you're like, brilliant, I'll install that library, and that'll be much quicker. But in order to install that library, you have to upgrade some other libraries. And so you upgrade the other libraries, but then you find there's a bug in the calendar when you upgraded those libraries. And all of a sudden, you're fixing a bug in a calendar when all you wanted to do was change the color of one thing on the homepage, for example. And so that would be yak shaving. So what are you doing? I'm just yak shaving some things, and you're there deep in some other problem in order to make this other thing happen. So that's what yak shaving is.
So is yak shaving specifically about like IT, like software developing then, or code writing, that kind of thing? Or is that just where that's just kind of a good example of it?
I think it's just a place where it comes up again and again. But I think for me, and one of the reasons I thought it made a good topic to share is this. I think it comes up in everyday life all the time, and it might, yes, software is a prime example. But I was thinking the other day of, I set out to like tidy my room, or like, you tidy your room, and then
how old are you?
Yeah, sorry. Tidy a room. Well, it's a bit of a mess in here. I train the camera. And then you look in the box and you're like, okay, I'll just get rid of this box. And then you go, oh, there's some nice photos in here. And then you start looking at the photos. But you're like, I don't want to throw away these photos. So I should do something with them. So I should scan them. And then all of a sudden you're like, okay, well, I need to find an app. I'll find an app to scan it. And then you're on some website reading reviews of photo scanning apps when you're supposed to be tidying your room. Like that, for me, is quite a common sort of situation in real life, not just in code world.
Well, I mean, I'd say it definitely applies to my life as well. Although if you ask my girlfriend, I think she'd probably have a slightly different take on it, in that it's not necessarily things that you have to do in order to get to that, the job that you initially set out to do. It's just that you got distracted by some other things that you go, oh, I could do that quickly before actually getting on with it. Tommy, you're probably quite similar, aren't you?
Yes, there's a lot of times where you're doing stuff. There's so many different examples in the whole time. One of a classic one is we have a camper van, a VW California camper van, and
right.
you
like to show off.
You put the bed down to sleep in it, and then the kids are upstairs, and then they come down, they want some breakfast, right? And you're like, oh, we'll put some breakfast on, which means getting to the drawer, right? To get to the drawer, you've got to put the bed up, you've got to get up, you've got to put the seat back, put the bed up. Then you've got to like move this to move that, and then that's in the way, so you've got to move that, and then you've got to open the door to put this, and then you've got to get the kettle out of the sink to get the cup that was in the bottom, to open the drawer, to get to the thing, to get to the thing. And you're like, when you're in the van, there's 5 things you always have to do whatever the one thing is that you actually wanted to do. And what is amazing is when you come home, you're like, oh, to get a spoon, I just opened this drawer and I can get a spoon. To boil water,
The joy of it.
I just turned the kettle on. I don't have to do the 4 other things before. So Yak shaving in a camper van is hugely classic, but I think you are also very right that I get distracted.
It reminds me of one of those little puzzles where you have the squares in a square, and there's one space,
Yes.
and you need to move that one to the right, and you have to move them all the way around the thing in order to do it. It's kind of like that, isn't it?
But I guess the significance of the yak and shaving the yak, I love saying that, yak shaving. The significance of yak shaving, I guess, in this context and this sketch is about the fact that what you end up doing is so obscure and so far away from the original job that you set out to do. Is that kind of part of the concept?
I think it's the sort of thing where somebody comes in and goes,
What are you doing?
What are you doing?
Yeah. It's usually your wife or girlfriend go, what are you doing?
Yeah,
Right.
I'm just doing a bit of yak shaving because it does make sense. There's a reason why I'm doing this ridiculous thing right now.
There is a reason. But it's going to take you a long time to explain. So I'm thinking my ultimate, and do you remember when I missed a ski holiday because I had to rewrite a business plan by the Monday, and I had to rewrite the business plan because Lord Sugar didn't understand what the heck I was talking about in my business plan. And I was writing the business plan for that because I was trying to get through to be one of the winners, to be the winner rather than one of the two. And then I was on the Apprentice because I'd done these tasks, and I'd done these tasks, and the task 1 was I was making tomato soup because we were supposed to be making orange juice, but we couldn't get enough oranges, and the orange juice machine stopped working, and we had to make tomato soup instead. And the whole reason I was doing this is because I want to invent products, and I want to invent products, but I've missed a ski holiday, and there's 85 other things in the middle, and it's
quite deep, that, isn't it?
That's life.
So in order to be a crackpot inventor of consumer products, you need to make soup instead of making orange juice.
Yes. Or miss a skiing holiday.
Yeah.
Or sell nodding dogs on the Thames, as I was also doing.
I'd never thought about it quite in that way, but there's a lot of life you could say is somewhat yak shaving. You're like, what would I really like to be doing now? I'd like to be making music, or I'd like to be playing with my kids, but right now I'm at work doing this project so that I can earn the money, so I can do this, so I can get the space to do that, so I can eventually do this, so that, I don't know, so I can retire. It's a long sequence, isn't it? Yeah.
Life is just a series of shaving a whole herd of yaks.
Well, or is the goal, the smaller
shaving.
you can make that sequence, the happier you'll be. Yeah, just enjoy the yak shaving.
Is there a distinction, though? Because is the concept of yak shaving like a critical path that you need to do to get there? Or is it more of a haphazard path, and the fact that you end up shaving a yak, still good. The fact that you end up shaving a yak, is that kind of a chance thing, or is it that critical path of things that you have to do in order to get there? Is there a level of distinction between those two? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
I do know what you mean. I usually think of it as the critical path, but it's probably not strictly true. Like you can be doing something and it's very interesting to investigate the other ways. And, like it might be a very good thing to read the article right now that tells you about this. And it wasn't your intention to be doing that. But actually, maybe that's not such a bad use of your time, So, yeah, I usually think about it as the critical path. But perhaps it's not. Perhaps all those little deviations, they're good things.
Well, sometimes it's really not, though. So like that coding example, Jono, and I find it a lot. We work with Amazon a lot to sell stuff on Amazon. And so much of that is, I wanted to do this, but then I realised that the code name was wrong on that. So then I had to go and change the code name. But to change the code name, I had to change it in the master system. But to change the master system, I had to log into this system. And then my my login had expired. So therefore I needed to find a new credit card because the credit card thing. But to get a new credit card, I had to get a PO. And to get a PO, I had to find John. And John wasn't available till Wednesday. So I had to find Karen. And Karen gave me a thing like that. And all you wanted to do...
Really good.
Are you comparing Karen to a yak?
I have changed names.
Or is John the yak?
But yeah, that is. And sometimes you're just like, this yak shaving is so frustrating. And sometimes it's like, oh, I've learned about a whole new thing along the way.
I think you're right, Tommy. That's a really good point. So sometimes the fact that you end up shaving a yak could be really frustrating, but other times it could be this really pleasant, surprising activity that you've ended up doing as part of the journey of whatever the original goal was.
Often I think it's quite satisfying. You're like making stuff better, right? It's like, actually, that's probably where I run into it a bit more. It's like, you could do it this way, but it would be better if I did it this way. And it would be better if I did it this way. And it'd be better if I learned about this and coded it so I didn't have to do it again, And you actually learn all the way along that journey quite often. And you've made stuff better. It feels quite good if you unravel the yak all the way back to the beginning again. You've made the world a better place.
Or you found bugs or you found problems that you might not have noticed otherwise.
But it can be a massive frustration, especially so for me. Like I like doing DIY and woodworking and that kind of stuff, and you just want to get this thing done. But sometimes it means you have to go down, you have to get in the car or get on your bike or whatever, and go down the DIY store because you haven't got the right bit, or you haven't got the right fixing, or you haven't got the right tool, or I don't know, your chisel's not sharp enough, so you've got to go inside and get a bucket of water so you can put your sharpening stone in the water and then to sharpen it. It just goes on and on and on. It's really frustrating. And then you've been out there all day and you've not got half as far as you wanted to.
It's funny that you say it's so frustrating, because to hear you say it and to hear you say it, Tom, they're quite funny. Like it's quite funny to hear all these ridiculous things that you're doing in order to get this other thing done. I don't know what it is. There's something deep in those. It's quite amusing watching somebody do ridiculous, annoying things.
Have you heard the concept of you're trying to assign how long it's going to take to do this one job, and you might say it's going to take 5 minutes, and the theory is that take whatever you've said, go up a unit and multiply it by 2. So if I say this is going to take 5 minutes, go up a unit from minutes to hours, 5 hours times it by 2, 10 hours. So what I originally set out is going to think it's a 5-minute job, it's going to be a 10-hour job. That's because I've ended up in Outer Mongolia with a razor, whereas what I wanted to do was redo the silicon around the bottom of the shower.
That's really good. There's a sketch that I quite like, something called a Hofstadter's law. And
What's that?
Hofstadter's law is it always takes longer than you expect, even when you account for Hofstadter's law.
Brilliant. Love that.
So even when you sit there and you think, I know that this is going to be longer than I think, you never allow enough. even that. Yeah, that's a great rule. The unit times by 2. Bear that in mind.
That's very good. I'll include the link to the sketch on Hofstadter's law as well in the podcast below, listeners, if you want to go and check that one out. I think the two probably are quite linked, aren't they? Because I don't think you ever expect to end up as far away from the original job as sometimes you do.
No, never.
Somebody once told me if you're going to go backpacking, like a long travel trip, the rule is take half as many clothes and twice as much money as you think you need. which is quite good. But the curious thing there is that you have to first make that estimate of what you think you need.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And then you're like, right, okay, that's what I think I need. And then you have to sit there and go, no, that's wrong.
That's hard to do because you've put a bit of brain power into considering what you're going to need.
Do you think you're right?
Like, and you could probably sit there and justify it.
Absolutely, yeah. So to think, okay, I think I'm right. I must be wrong. It's quite challenging to do. I've never managed it. Yeah, usually take the money out halfway through and throw away the clothes. That's the way you do it.
Just to meet that particular law. Yeah.
Get another credit card. Go speak with Karen or whatever it is.
Are there any jobs, Tommy? You mentioned one earlier that when you're home and not in the camper van, you can just get a teaspoon out of the drawer. Are there any jobs or tasks or activities in life generally that you can think of that don't require or end up yak shaving? Simple tasks. But I don't know if that's a valid question because we said about earlier, you could apply it to life generally. So even sitting down and reading a book, how far do you want to take it? I mean, the paper for that book's had to be made somewhere.
When I sit down and read a book, I want to, have the cushions on the chair and I want to have a coffee, but you have to turn the coffee maker on, but you have to fill up the water for the coffee and it's out of coffee and then you have to heat up the coffee and it's 10 minutes before I start a book.
So I was trying to work this out earlier about like flow and the sort of link with this and going, is this as an example where we enjoy things where it has the least yak shaving in it, like sitting down and watching telly where you're kind of absorbed in a movie, although it does usually take you ages to find what you want to watch. So you sit there like scrolling through or trying to search and then waiting for it to then download or whatever, and all you wanted to do was just sit down. And by the time you finished your food, you still hadn't even found the movie you were going to watch while you were eating your food because you're still scrolling through over.
Then the batteries in the remote run out.
Exactly.
Yeah. No, I think you're probably onto something. The examples when you said that came to mind for me were two things. One was, and they don't really count, but one was sports. Yeah. Where if I'm playing football or tennis, I'm never yak shaving. You're just playing. You're in the rules of the game in the moment, just playing. I'm never deviating off to do something else. And the other one was like hiking in nature or something. I go climb a mountain, and I'm just like, okay, that's our goal. I'll go towards it, do what I need to do to get there, and it's all part of the experience. So that they don't really count, but those activities are really fun, and they've got no yak shaving in for me.
Once you're doing them, once you've started, once you're doing them, yeah.
So, Jono, one of your other brilliant ones is you overestimate how much we can do in a year or a month, whatever it is, but underestimate how much you can get done in a decade. I don't know if you've done a sketch explanation of that, but I think of that regularly, and I'm just thinking of this dichotomy that if it's clear that whenever we set out to do something, it's going to take a lot longer to do, then we're therefore, you would imagine, not going to get nearly as much done in our life, in our year, than we thought we would get done, right? But how come that it does also seem to be true that we sort of get more done in a decade than we ever thought we would?
So what does it say again? Summarize it again. Overestimate what you can do in a day, but you underestimate what you might achieve in a decade.
Is it that? John?
Essentially, yeah. I think it's Bill Gates said something like that. Yeah,
wise man.
That's the idea that next year you don't think we'll have made great progress on, I don't know, biofuels or whatever, but you look back in a decade and we've made huge progress. That kind of the way it works. Is that a technology only thing? I don't know. That's probably where the experience came from. But maybe it's a life thing. All these little things, they build up, right? Yeah, it's like collecting. I could get back to that. You collect a few quotes here and there, and then all of a sudden you've got a book of quotes. The book sounds like a major achievement, but a few quotes added doesn't seem like very much. So, yeah, interesting.
Was there any other business about yak shaving? Anything that you feel you need to get in before we round off this discussion? I have one. So I've never physically shaved a yak, but I have sanded and oiled the horn of a Highland cow.
I remember watching that and thinking, this segment will be very popular.
Whilst it was still attached? No.
Yeah. It was attached to the Highland cow. It was being prepared for show, and it needed its horns shining up. So you get sandpaper and there's no other way to do it other than you sand
horn on the
head.
Horn.
Okay. Yeah, horn on the head. And the cow's there. She enjoyed it. She really enjoys it. She's very happy. And then you oil it up.
It's not suggestive at all.
A female cow.
I mean, she looked beautiful. She looked ready to be shown, and she was a prize-winning cow. She'd won prizes. Anyway, I digress. Yeah. That's as close to I've got to physically that's shaving a yak. Yeah,
that's a good point. Should we? Is it possible to shave a yak? Can we find a website, shaveayak.com? We can actually go and do this.
I'd shave a yak, I guess. Yeah, for content for the podcast.
Amazing. I wonder how much we can get you to do. If I booked it and didn't go...
Why am I doing it all of a sudden?
If we found a place for you to do it...
I don't know.
Sheep shearing. That's pretty close. Right. I'll try and book you in.
All right. Maybe for the promo for the podcast, we'll go and do some sheep shearing somewhere and video it, and then that'll be the promo.
Record the podcast at the same time. Amazing.
I guess to summarise, I think most people probably could think of things in their lives, and yak shaving definitely fits the bill. And I'm kind of sad that we're coming to the end of being able to repeatedly say yak shaving as a phrase.
It's just such a great term, isn't it?
It just flows really well, yak shaving.
It's so out there. You never hear anything like it. Yeah.
Anyway, it's a great term, and it's a great sketch. I love it because once again, there's another character in there. There's the guy shaving the yak, and then there's the other guy kind of looking on
quizzically.
Which I really love. Do you know what? That is a thing with a lot of your sketches. There's the thing that's going on, but there's always this kind of secondary character who's kind of going, well, what's going on here? Even though they might not have facial expressions, you just know what they're doing.
And you know it's Jono's wife.
What the hell are you doing?
Anyway, listeners, feel free to leave comments about your own yak shaving on the social media posts on Instagram or Twitter for this particular sketchplanation. Again, the links to this sketch are in the podcast episode description down below, and we'll all enjoy having a good flick through those as they come in. Otherwise, I think we'll probably call it a day on yak shaving. But in order to do that, first, we need to fade up the music. Here it comes. Well, I think we've already decided what the sketch is for our next episode. It's going to be phubbing, which sounds a little bit seedy, but I can assure you it's not. So make sure you're listening to find out more about that, or you could just look up the sketchplanation for it. But thank you all very much for joining us on our meandering exploration of the world. There are over 70 million podcast episodes out there that you could be listening to, and now there's over 70 million and one. Imagine that. But here we are, you and us, and we're delighted that you're here. Come on in, make yourself at home. If you want to drink, help yourself. Toilets are just through there. And if you want to subscribe to the rest of the series, then click the subscribe button. We'll be back next week, but until then, stay well, go well, and just do your best to keep the place tidy, will you? Cheers.
Till next week.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Music on this podcast is sourced from the very talented Frank Cinelli, and you can find loads more tracks at frankcinelli.com.